Hey, good morning. It's late and I'm busy. I'm back at work, but only sort of temporarily. Um, yeah, things are all over the place at work at the minute, so I'm gonna make a super quick video uh, explaining and detailing the flame launcher. Now, that actually works out kind of well because the circuit itself for the flame launcher is possibly the easiest circuit in this entire project. In fact, it's the easiest element of this entire project. Um, it's essentially just a light switch. The elements that went into it took a long while to get to that simple because it was a case of refining and prototyping and everything. So let's break down the concept. Like all of the other elements of the guitar, I took various scenes from the 1973 film The Exorcist and broke them down into concepts for a guitar. So, for example, the blood was like that famous scene, and that's where the blood came from. The smoke was the original poster shot with Max von Sydow coming up to the house, Father Merrin, and that's where all the sort of smoke came from for the smoke machine. The what else is there? There's the lights, and that was the words appearing on Regan's midriff, the help me words, so on and so forth. So for this part of the guitar, or this, feature of the guitar, the scene in question is the one where Regan's mum is walking, what's her name? Christine McNeil is walking through the attic. She hears a noise upstairs, so she pulls down the ladder and goes through. And because it's like completely pitch black in the attic, she has a candle. Now you got to remember, this isn't their house. They're sort of like renting this house while she's filming. So she's walking through with this candle, and she gets to, I don't know, she's only up there for like the best part of 2 minutes, and all of a sudden this candle, which has a standard little flame on it, just shoots up. It's one of maybe, I'm going to say it's one of maybe 2 jump scares, maybe 3 jump scares in the entire movie. The movie itself is about, it's not about making you sort of shocked. It's about making you feel super uncomfortable. Yeah, it's not a jump scare heavy movie, but that one scene stood out to me because that's the one that always got me. It's literally just a flame shoots out, and I'm like, that's really cool. That has to be in the build somewhere. Where am I going to put it? So I'm like, cool. How did they do it in the movie? Probably with some like propane and stuff. I'm not going to start putting propane in a guitar. Anything that's going to be near your sort of like crotch area, you don't really want to put explosives or anything super duper flammable. So I started to look at what's visually arresting, what's visually very captivating, but also incredibly safe. And then I thought back to a TV show that I liked called Arrested Development, and the brother, Job, is what he would call illusions, but essentially they're like small magic tricks. So I thought, yeah, that's right. When magicians want to do something, they sort of go, and there's like a big flash, and then, like a bird appears, or like a scarf, or, whatever they took off the audience member, like big spark, and there it is. They don't burn their hands. Like, that's over in a second, maybe half a second, and they don't look like they've got third-degree burns all over their hands. How do they do it? And it was then that once I hit up eBay and sort of like looked into like magicians' props and magicians', equipment, I found out about something called flash paper. Now, flash paper is basically very thin sheets of like essentially toilet paper, but like thin cotton sheets in small squares, but it's impregnated with some kind of accelerant, which burns incredibly quickly, but doesn't produce heat. It just produces light. So when you see them with that flame in their hands, it's not actually hot because it burns so quick and so fast that it doesn't produce any heat. And I'm like, cool. And then I found out about something called a flame launcher or a fire launcher. And what it is It's like a ring that a magician will put on. Kind of like, you know, those false finger tricks where they sort of like pull off the false finger, similar to that. They'll have a ring, and on the inside of the ring will be like a tube. And what they'll do is they'll press a button, and a 9-volt battery will heat up a heating element, and out of the tube will shoot a wadded up, scrunched up bit of flash paper. And it just shoots in a nice arc. So I'm like, cool, I could buy one of those. They're only about 10, 15 quid. They're not expensive. But attaching it to the back of the guitar is, like, literally on the headstock, is going to be clumsy. Like, it would have to go in between the machine heads, and then every time you use it, or, you know, you take it out, the idea is that this guitar is supposed to be completely unassuming. Other than maybe the battery compartment, you would never know that this isn't just a standard flying V. Like, there is nothing to tip you off that this thing is going to bleed, or say help me, or shoot fire. You know what I mean? Like, looking at it, it has to be unassuming. And if I've got a big, bulky ring-sized, you know, flash launcher on the headstock, it's going to look like, I could say it's like a tuner. Like, you know, you get those things that you put on the headstock. You can see if it's in tune or not. I could say it's one of those, or build it into one of those, but it's going to look ugly. So I thought, well, as soon as I've built a vape machine, as soon as I've built a syringe driver, as soon as I've built, you know what I mean, the wording to come through it, and as soon as I've built most of the guitar, why not just build a flash launcher? Like, how hard could it be? Whoever's done it on eBay, if you look at some of the eBay listings, they're a bit homebrew looking. Like, they're not machined very well. Some of them have got like electrical tape all over them. I could do that. So what I wanted to do was build a very slim, thin line flame launcher. Something that I could drill into the wood, because I figured if I could drill into the wood to put that rubber hose pipe to get the smoke out, if I can do that, then I can definitely put in a tube. So what I needed was, and again, breaking down the vape into 4 elements really did help. Once I had an idea of the basic components that made a vape machine, actually making it was really simple. So what I needed to do was figure out what for the best part, let's just call it a fire launcher, what a fire launcher's prime components are. Okay, so the best way to approach thinking about this is try and imagine like cooking Mexican or Italian food. Now, this isn't the case every time, but in most cases, what you've got is the same ingredients reconfigured and redistributed in different ways. So when you think about this fire launcher, you've got to think about it as the vape machine or the smoke machine. Same ingredients, just reconfigured in a slightly different way, with one exception, like one of the ingredients has been switched out. So I knew that it had to be put into the headstock. Like, I knew it had to be buried inside because I wanted it to look clean. So I needed something with a specific diameter, and the diameter of the tube had to be thinner than the width of the headstock because it was going to be sunk in. That was a must. It also needed to be able to withstand heat, just in case the paper got stuck inside and just burnt consistently inside. I didn't want it to deform inside or decolor. It had to be easy to clean, and it had to be able to withstand the pressure of me hammering it down if I needed to get it inside the headstock. So I knew it needed to be metal. So I needed to buy metal tubing. Now, metal tubing is not inexpensive, but also it's not cheap if you wanted to prototype, because you need to know, you don't know how much you're going to need. You don't know, the material necessarily. So you can go on eBay, you can go on Amazon, you can buy metal tubing, but it's, like I say, it's not expensive, but it's not cheap either. Or you can go to Asda and you can get 2 very nice biros, like very nice biros, for 50 pence for a pack of 2. So for 25 pence, you have got this. I'll show you. That's probably not going to focus. I'll cover it over my face. There you go. So you've got this sort of like green, almost like snake skin or alligator skin, like leather paint job on the outside. But it is a brass pen. And I measured it in the shop, and it is the right diameter. So for 25 pence a pen, basically just take a hacksaw to it, which is exactly what I did. This is all that's left of the, I bought 4. So I spent £1 and got 4 brass biros. Stripped the insides out, and I had exactly the right diameter to bury inside the headstock. So the reason that you need it around about this long is if it's too short, you're just going to get a puff. If you want something to go in a direction, just like a rifle, you need a little bit of length. So I worked out through prototyping, again, just by hacking up these brass pens with a hacksaw, essentially, that I needed roughly this, this length to get a fairly decent flame to shoot out.
No, I'm filming it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, cool.
We're in the very end, and ramrodded it down with a little. There you go. It's a bit still smoking a little bit, so it's probably a bit hot in there.
Yeah. All right. Let's turn this off.
Smoke alarm's probably gonna go off.
Okay, test number 2, go. Woo!
Caught that.
Goddamn! But how do you actually get the flame to shoot out? Flash paper itself is not expensive. You can buy flash paper, again, on eBay, and it just looks like toilet paper. It's very, very thin. It's impregnated with something, and a little goes a long way. So how do you get the end hot? Like, you can't just have a lighter here. And I did experiment with different things, and I was like, well, maybe I could just get a piece of flint, and then that wouldn't really light it, or some kind of alcohol, and that wasn't going very well. And in the end, what I came up with was resistance wire. Now, this is exactly the same resistance wire that's in the vape coil. So essentially, the way the vape works is that I take a 9-volt battery, connect one end of the resistance wire to one terminal and one end to the other via a switch. When you press the switch, it connects the circuit. The resistance wire resists the current, and that electricity is expelled in heat. So this heats up. And I'm like, right, well, all I've got to do is figure out a way of getting this resistance wire inside the base of this tube. Then all I've got to do is link a wire coming out the end to the battery to a switch. Like, simple. It is literally a light switch circuit. The problem that I had was getting the end sealed. You need the end to be completely sealed. Otherwise, when you light it, it's not going to go anywhere. You need that expansion of heat and that expansion of like the gas behind the wad of paper to propel it forward. So what I did was I actually took the inside of the pen. So when you consider that, like when you was in school, you used to get bored, you used to disassemble pens. Like, you can slide this sort of brass casing off. All I did was I took the bit in the middle, slid that out, and drilled it. So I've drilled the end completely. Inside the smoke machine, I don't know if you remember. If you haven't seen it, check out the last video, because I disassembled the smoke machine to show you how it works. And I am going to show you how this one works, but just for context. Brass standoffs. So when you have a Raspberry Pi, you can have brass standoffs, and those standoffs separate the different layers of Raspberry Pi boards. It's so that they don't touch and you short out, essentially. So you have these little brass legs, essentially. What I did was I got 2 of those brass standoffs, covered them in insulating plastic. So the heat shrink tubing, wrapped them in heat shrink tubing, shrunk them down. So now I've got these 2 brass standoffs wedged inside this. If I can screw in a piece of resistance wire to those 2 brass standoffs, that will connect. That will quite easily, electricity, I'm not running a lot of electricity through. So through a small brass standoff, that is more than enough to complete the circuit. So what I needed to do was take the inside of the pen, run those 2 brass standoffs in, and then find a way to put that in and pull it out, because obviously the resistance wire is going to eventually burn out. I couldn't have something that was unable to be cleaned, the resistance wire to be changed, you know, any of that. So when I take this thing apart, it's going to look really weird, but what you're looking at essentially is the inside of the pen with 2 Raspberry Pi standoffs and 2 little screws on. The one thing I will say is that the difference between the smoke machine and this was that with the smoke machine you have to turn it on and leave it for a bit because you want the smoke to billow out. This is kind of a one and done. Like, you want to push the button and then you don't want it to stay on, because all that's happening is that your headstock is getting very hot because of the resistance wire, and it will just burn out quicker. What you need is like a short, sharp switch. So what I did was I got these momentary switches. Now, I got these on eBay. I didn't realize you can actually buy tiny little arcade switches. I wish I knew this when I built the arcade machine. But these are tiny little arcade machine switches. They are super, super cute. Let me get the lid off here. Look how cute these things are. So what I did is I only really needed one white one. And I got the white arcade machine switch. It's just a little momentary switch. So you hold it, it starts to heat up, the flame comes out, you let go. That's it. So it's not like a toggle switch, it's literally just an arcade, tiny little arcade machine switch. I've also brought with me another little work in progress element that I'm building, just as a little, you know, nice little attention to detail. All right, cool, let's have a look at it. Okay, so let's go through the circuit from beginning to end, starting as always from the 9-volt battery, which is in here in the battery compartment. That then comes out into this terminal block. Now, all 4 of the electrical elements feed off of this one terminal block. So we go from here, down this wire along here, into a small hole under here, which I've drilled into the pocket for where the neck sits. So after the neck was set into place and I was happy with it, I drilled into the neck pocket near the truss rod, but there was still a couple of millimeters gap. That then comes out on the other side of the neck joint down here. Now this, even though it looks like this is actually the same material, it's not. This top bit here is actually a piece of perspex which I've cut so it's exactly the same shape as the neck joint. And then what I did was I sprayed it, painted it, you know, sanded it, everything else, but cut a hole that's exactly the same diameter as one of those mini arcade buttons. So in the back here is just a momentary switch. The idea is that as you're coming, you know, down the neck, you can use your fingers here for these, but also you can just tap the button here. It's not sticking out too far where if you're, you know, putting on the strap peg or just using the guitar itself, you won't accidentally press it. You actually have to get in quite close and push it all the way in. It's almost flush. I didn't want, you know, an accidental discharge of the fire. So anyway, what I did then was get the hand tools out and cut a skunk stripe again along where the truss rod would be, just at the back. So it actually comes out from underneath this panel and then up the back of the neck. It's all been filled, it's all been sanded, it's all been painted. That then comes up to where the sticker is. Now on the other side, you'll actually see it come out. If I just lean this up against here and get up, you can actually see where the wires come out. Again, all the wires I'm using is just speaker cable because it's cheap and you get twice as much because you have a left and a right. So at the time this was about, I think it was like 25p a meter, something like that. But now it's obviously gone up, it's over 50p a meter now. And then down the end here, let's try and get this in focus. So like I say, you see this silvery bit is actually the inside of the pen. The black bit where my thumb is, that's actually shrink tubing. And then on top of the silvery bit, you'll see some glue stick, and then coming out of the glue stick, you'll see two, they are actually black, but again, that's shrink tubing standoffs with 2 screws in. So those are 2 Raspberry Pi standoffs with shrink tubing around them to insulate them. then the inside of the pen, then some shrink tubing, and then just out the bottom of the pen, this wire. The reason this wire does this sort of weird kink here is because when this top bit of perspex is finished, it's going to be a little trapdoor here, which you can lift up and pull this out of. But to get the trapdoor working, I've had to angle it and tuck it into this little pocket here. Now, the tube itself, hang on, let me just lean it forward. The tube itself is here, and you should be able to see all the way through. There you go, all the way through. So it's actually not that long to come out. It's really, you know, only this much, but the tube does go all the way down to about here. You can actually see the tube under here, the small brass tube. And this, because it was originally part of the pen, sits airtight in it. And the shrink tubing means that there's absolutely no oxygen getting in. So what I'm going to do is just quickly show you the circuit from beginning to end by pressing this button. Let's focus up on here. I'm going to press this button down behind here, and you'll see the resistance wire glow. There you go. So all I'm doing is basically just making a circuit, and then that resistance wire glows so hot that it lights the flash paper over here, and then the flash paper shoots out the top. It really is the most simple thing. Let me show you how it fits in. So again, I'm just popping this in the tube, just under here, by putting it in, and then pop. So that is now snug. This tucks in just in the pocket here, because again, I am hinging, and to hinge something you do need a bit of space in the middle, which is why it does this weird sort of U-bend. But then maybe I can show you from the top. Look, I'm going to press the button again. There you go, and it shoots out the top. Like, it really is that simple. It's basically a light switch circuit. It could not be simpler. Now, with that in mind, I just want to end this video by showing you a work in progress element to this guitar, like one of the, almost a very literal ribbon just to tie a bow on it. And with all the other elements, it has to be within the theme of the movie. A guitar strap, just a guitar strap, Ernie Ball, nylon webbing strap. Nothing special. It costs a couple of quid. You can pick them up on Amazon. Everyone's, you know, got or used one of these. So how do I theme this in with the movie? Well, luckily, my parents have a computer-controlled embroidery machine, so they can embroider anything, any design that you can make onto basically anything. So what I did was I asked them very nicely to embroider these. So what is this, and why have I made it? Well, what this is from the movie. In fact, it is maybe one of my favorite scenes from the movie. And it's not because there's anything scary, it's not because there's anything gross or there's, you know, anything terrifying happening. It is just a character building moment. And the character building moment for this particular scene shows how Father Merrin is just such a badass, that he knows fully well what he's doing and what is about to happen. So the scene in question is just after the box, the poster shot. So Father Merrin turns up in the taxi, there's all the smoke, there's the lights, he walks up to the front door, he rings the front doorbell and introduces himself, steps into the house, and as soon as he does, Regan upstairs, who at this point is completely taken over, so she's Pazuzu at this point, screams Merrin from upstairs, screams his name from upstairs. At this point, you can just see on Father Merrin's face, he knows what he's about to get into. He knows exactly what is about to happen. And this, I think, is why I love this scene so much. He turns to Father Karras and says, go over to the presbytery, get the rite of exorcism, and get me a purple stole. So Father Karras is like, well, don't you want to just let me describe to you the elements of this case? And he literally turns around to him, looks him in the face and says, why? Like, Father Merrin knows. He knows what he needs to do. He doesn't need to know the ins and outs of the case. He doesn't need to know anything. He knows exactly what he's got upstairs, and he is ready to do war. And this is his armor. Like the words, the rite of exorcism, those are his bullets. This is his armor. This is what he needs. So it's very, very difficult to find a picture of the stole that Father Merrin wears. It actually only appears very, very quickly in about 2 shots of the movie. Very little sort of promotional stuff of the stole appears online either. It's incredibly hard to find an image of it. However, I did manage to pause the DVD at a couple of frames where you can kind of see the detailing on it, and this is as close as I could get to it. So it is just a white cross with 4 little purple crosses on. This is just like tassels, like stitched at the bottom. So what I've had this done is basically just asked very nicely for them to embroider it onto some material, and then all I've done is just glued it on with something called Wonder Web, which is you just iron on. And the back of the stole is just like a little gold cross. Now again, I tried to find promotional material, I tried to find still shots or production shots, and it's incredibly hard to find. So this is as close as I could get it. But yeah, I just love the attention to detail, and like I said, this is possibly one of my most favorite scenes from the movie. And if it needed a strap and it was going to have a strap, why not? So yeah, I'm going to finish it up. It hasn't got one on the other side. What I need to do is, once I have put the strap in, like adjusted it for comfort, I can know exactly where the other side needs to be. So at the moment, only the neck side is done, but the bridge side, the tail side, I'm going to do that later. But yeah, this is shaping up to be something very, very special. All right, cool. Until next time, when this thing is finally built and ready to go. Peace.